Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we're actually going to head to one of the islands of Scotland, one of the most beautiful places in the country. It's still on my to-do list, so hopefully I can go up and visit it sometime. But we're going to go to the Isle of Skye and try the Cuillin Beast, which is a Scotch ale, and this is from the Isle of Skye Brewery, who are based in Uig on that island. So, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll take you through a very kind of short history of the brewery. It is only a minute or two long, but if you do want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. The brewery website's in the description for you below, along with a link to the other reviews that I've done from these guys before, and there will be more added to that in the very near future. So anyway, the Isle of Skye Brewery was founded in April of 1995 by Angus McGrory and Stephen Tinney, both of whom are teachers at Portree High School on the island. The production began in the brewery in December 1995, and this was at their purpose-built facility at the Ferry Pier in Uig. Now, Stephen sold his share in the brewery to Angus towards the end of 1996, and now the brewing operation is overseen by head brewer Pam Jones, who was actually trained up in-house, and she's assisted by Norrie MacLeod. The brewery has a new 30-barrel brew plant which was manufactured by Macmillan's in Edinburgh. These guys are quite well known for doing a lot of whisky distilleries and the famous copper kettles at the Caledonian Brewery in Edinburgh, but they now produce up to 60 barrels of beer per week, and they have a fermentation capacity of 80 barrels and also a conditioning capacity, of 100 barrels, and they installed a bottling facility in 1998 as well, which was also when Angus gave up his teaching job for good to oversee things at the brewery. But demand for the beers soon proved to be so great that they actually had to begin brewing and bottling under contract at the Belhaven Brew, although they still maintain their base in Uig. But that's just because they really just had to scale up because their beer is pretty good and it did become very popular. But their beers are now available all throughout Scotland, and they're also being exported to the US, Canada, Japan, New Zealand, and also Iceland as well. I actually saw these beers when I was in Iceland, and when I was in Japan, and I was quite surprised just to see the Isle of Skye Brewery in Japan. It was quite cool. But I noticed as well they've changed their label, so this is the older label for the Cuillin Beast, but it does have a kind of more modern label, and I think they've changed their bottles to be a bit taller as well, so keep an eye out for that. Hopefully in one of my future reviews I can get one of the newer bottles for you. But just to list the other beers you can get from these guys, you get Red Cuillin, which I've reviewed for you before, Black Cuillin, which is a stout, Young Pretender, Blaven, Hebridean Gold, which is a golden ale, Cuillin Beast, this guy here, which is a strong ale or a Scotch ale, Lord of the Ales, which is a golden ale, and Oyster Stout, Skye's Grand, which is an anniversary ale, and also Skylight, which is a summer ale. So there's a good wee selection for you there, but we'll get on to the tasting of this guy itself now. So to tell you about the actual specifics of this beer, it's a 7% Scotch ale. It contains Fugels and Boadicea hops with a malt base of pale ale, crystal and caramel malts, and it uses a special yeast strain which is called Skye's Own, and I think that must be one that they've kind of cultivated themselves. So you are getting a kind of truly unique Scotch ale with this one. So I'll just bring up the camera and let you have a wee quick look at the artwork on this one. Not sure why they changed this, to be honest. I liked their artwork that was this style, but maybe they've just done it to be a little bit more modern and things. Their new badges are nice as well, but I personally, for the Cuillin Beast, I actually really like this one. I'll just put the light down so you can see it well. It looks quite menacing and things, and they've got a nice bottle cap on here as well. I don't know if they've changed this with their new labels here, but it says here on the side as well, the Isle of Skye Brewery produces ales of the highest quality. Only the finest natural ingredients are used in the brewing of Skye Brewery ales. Cuillin Beast was judged CAMRA's Champion Beer of Scotland in 2011, and it does have a few other awards. Check out the brewery website and it will tell you a bit about that. It also has a thing on the side that says, legend says that the great Celtic warrior Cuillin was accompanied into a battle by a fierce dog beast that lived in the heart of the Cuillin Mountains. The Cuillin Beast is deceptively strong ale, which, like the original beast, needs careful handling. Caramel and fruit dominate this award-winning ale. Very, very nice. So cool that they've got the little bit of history on the side there, but without further ado, let's get on with the tasting of this guy. 7% Scotch ale, as I told you before. As you can see, nice little smoky opening. You can really smell the fruit off that as you open it up as well. There's a nice kind of whiff of these fruity esters. There was a bit of confusion on Rate Beer and Beer Advocate as well about whether this is meant to be a Scotch ale or whether it's a strong ale. But one thing I noticed was that on Rate Beer they described it as an English strong ale in terms of style. But what I should point out is that The English strong ale is a very, very different one, a very different style from the Scotch strong ale, if you like. Scotch strong ales tend to be a good bit darker with a good bit more cereal and kind of rye bready character in them, in my experience. But very different styles of beer, and they tend to have a bit more caramel and sort of fruity element in them as well. The English ones tend to be a bit more earthy, but that's just my experience. I might be talking rubbish there, so you can decide that for yourself. But as you can see, what's interesting about this beer, if I bring up the light and let you see the colour of this, it's actually poured. It looks more like a kind of amber ale actually, which is quite interesting. I was quite surprised because some people on Beer Advocate were actually describing this as a Scotch ale. But as you can see, it's poured with a nice kind of two-finger frothy cream coloured head. There's a good little bit of carbonation just floating up towards the end, the underside of the head there. Some big bubbles and some little bubbles just sticking to the side of the glass as well. If I put my fingers behind it, put the light back down, I can see that's getting very bright. But you can see it is transparent if I put my fingers behind the glass. It looks very, very nice. So let's give it a wee smell. So quite an interesting aroma in this one. It does have a good bit more cereal in it, which was what I was saying was one of the characteristics of the Scotch beers in comparison to the English ones. You've got a big sort of cereal aroma coming out of the malt base on this one. But you've got a good sweet caramel element to it as well. It's almost like a really mix between the sort of earthy and cereally elements that you're getting out of this. You can definitely pick out an earthy hop, but it almost kind of comes across as being like a sort of Scottish peaty smokiness that's coming out of it. And if you've tried Scotch whiskies, this is a kind of aroma that you'll be particularly familiar with. It's quite hard to describe to somebody who's not used to whiskey, but if you are, you really get the kind of, it's a really kind of earthy smokiness, if you like, slightly meaty as well. You sort of get this earthy kind of coaly smell out of it. It's very, very nice. So if you do find this beer abroad, definitely take a little bit of time and just kind of search for that sort of Scottish peaty aroma, because it is something that's really quite unique to Scottish beers. But yeah, you've got a nice kind of sweet caramel malt coming out of there, just mixing in with that kind of peaty, earthy sort of cereal aroma that you're getting as well. You can get a little bit of the toasted character in off the bread as well, but there is a definite little bit of dark fruit as well. As you swirl it up, you're getting more of the kind of earthy and cereally element coming out of it. When you sit it still, you can pick up just a little bit of the fruity sweetness, and that's when you're really getting the kind of earthy peat character out of this guy as well, and more of the caramel. But it looks very, very nice, so without further ado, let's try the Cuillin Beast from the Isle of Skye Brewery. Slàinte. Now that's really interesting combination of flavours there. It's a big malty beer. It's more, the actual flavour of this beer is more of a blend. There's not one thing kind of punching its way out of this guy at you. You've got a nice sweet caramel malt base that just settles there in the middle of the tongue, and it's got a good bit of bready presence to it, this beer too. But you're actually getting a really interesting little bit of cereal character just kind of lining the edge of the tongue there, which is quite nice. There's a definite kind of chalky, peaty flavour in this as well. That's the one way you can always tell that it is actually peat, because in the mouthfeel you get this kind of chalky element to the flavour, and this beer does have that. I really like it when you've got a kind of a Scotch beer that has that. But yeah, it's definitely a Scottish strong ale rather than being a Scotch ale, if that makes sense. Normally with a Scotch ale you would expect it to be very, very dark, very, very roasted, whereas this guy is more of just a kind of lighter toasty thing, which means it is a strong ale rather than a kind of an actual Scotch ale where you've got a lot of the dark elements and a lot of stone fruit and things like that. But yeah, you've got a really nice big bready presence in this one. Some nice caramel malt just lingering there in the middle of the tongue. You can taste the Fugles hops in this. Fugles hops is one that I don't normally enjoy, but it's actually done very nicely in that, and you're getting just this kind of slightly smoky, slightly cereal character around the edge of the tongue. Normally with the Fugles hops you get this sort of horrible ashy flavour, but if it's used properly in porters and things like that and some of the darker beers, it works really well. But this is the first kind of lighter beer, sort of lighter coloured beer and things I've had where I actually like the Fugles flavour, so well done to Isle of Skye Brewery for that. There's a little bit of nutty flavour in this that just mixes in with the caramel as well. So with that caramel blanket, you're getting that nice kind of peaty, ashy, slightly earthy character just around the edges of the tongue there. So the hop element really suits this beer quite well. You are getting a little bit of alcohol warmth out it too, which is quite interesting. But there's maybe a little bit of a kind of, just a tiny little bit of kind of stone fruit in there too. Maybe it's a sort of candied fruit flavour you're getting from this one, or maybe figs. Not quite sharp enough to be plums or raisins. Definitely a sort of figgy, just a little bit of a figgy flavour just around the back edges of the tongue in particular. You're getting that. There's a little oily bubble that comes forward where you're getting more of the caramel coming out. That just comes forward from the middle of the tongue out to the front. Yeah, definitely a figgy flavour coming out of this one, but you get a little bit of the kind of ashy character of the Fugos hops there too. So it's a really interesting blend of flavours, this one. And really, in terms of style, for me, this kind of fits the sort of strong Scottish ale, but it's not a Scotch ale kind of wee heavy thing. It is a strong ale, a Scottish strong ale in that one in terms of style. In terms of the mouthfeel, I'd definitely say it's mid-bodied, maybe pushing the full-bodied one a bit. The actual bottle conditioning, it does feel like it comes out of a cask. It's got that sort of creamy, sort of kind of creamy, very full mouthfeel actually. So it's quite well done actually. I like beers that can pull off the bottle conditioning in that way. It's got a nice smooth carbonation in it, and it's got a good oily mouthfeel as well, but you've got a good bit of alcohol warmth in it too, and in the aftertaste you're getting a nice little bit of dry character. And as I said, I don't really like the Fugos hop normally, but the nice little bit of kind of ashy, sort of peaty character that comes out from the Fugos hop in this one is really nice, and it just sits on the edge of the tongue there with a little bit of earthiness, and that's a characteristic of a kind of proper Scottish beer, if you like. So really cool, and it's definitely a beer that if you want a true Scottish brew, I would say to check out. And those of you that can get this in America and Canada and things like that, give it a go. It is really nice, and for me as a Scottish beer reviewer, it is one of the kind of really nice and really quite interesting Scottish beers I've come across. So do check it out. I've enjoyed this one, so I would recommend you check out the Isle of Skye Brewery. They do have a good bit of range there, so pick a style that you enjoy, but I would say this one is kind of quite quirky, and it is a kind of true Scottish beer, if you like. So definitely check it out if you get the chance. Let me know in the comment section your own thoughts on this beer if you happen to have tried it before. I hope you've enjoyed my take on this one, and please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. I hope you're enjoying the kind of Scottish reviews I'm doing for you, and I will catch you soon with some more. Cheers.